to Central Weekly, a weekly podcast from the Central Podcast Network. We've got episode 62.
Wow.
That's Jon Henninger, ladies and gentlemen, or Batman. From Christian Bale Batman. You're welcome. Jerry is also here, and my voice is okay.
And who else you got in here?
We have the one, the only Phoebe Ile in the podcast. We're continuing our ministry spotlights. But wait, who would be the fourth one? I don't know. Guess who it is? Resident extraordinaire, Chapel Davis.
Hola, in honor of Cinco de Mayo.
Wow.
Yeah, look at that.
Good. That's good. We're recording this again on Friday, Cinco de Mayo. Right. We are in our fourth week of our series, Build This House. But again, we're going to talk in generals here. So we're going to be talking about what your topic was, marriage, but in general terms, as much as we can. But I say that, and then we just start talking about the sermon. But these two have not heard the sermon. And Chapel's not married. So this will be fun. But here's the thing. We're going to talk all things Kid Depot. Well, we have Phoebe. And, I mean, we'll get into this, but Chapel, again, resident extraordinaire, and you focus a lot in Kid Depot.
That's right.
And you excel a lot in Kid Depot.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
So we're going to talk some wins in the ministry of children's here at Central, and just talk about parenting in general a little bit, because I know you're going to be talking about that with the family next week, too. Right. So let's get in this episode. That's the generals. Here we go. So, John's, again, we're not talking about the sermon, but here's the sermon. I want people to understand this, because I don't think you're going to tell them right up front. The story that was told, right, that was probably 15 minutes in length to start out your sermon.
9, yeah.
9, was written by you.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I figure if I'm writing the sermon, I should write.
Yeah.
I don't want to just take somebody else's,
you
take
sound
somebody else's
so
story.
bad.
Thank you, man. I feel like I'm worse after I put this cough drop in my mouth.
Yeah. You start this because you wanted to do this in a different way.
Right. I feel like, Valentine's Day, last couple of years, whatever, when we've talked about marriage, Sarah and I have talked about marriage before. Mm-hmm. There's kind of a standard approach to it. Marriage is God's design. Marriage is between a man and a woman. Marriage. Mm-hmm. And so, I want to include all that stuff, but I'd like to take a different angle at it. I'd like to take a different approach so that, matter of fact, I said I want to preach differently because I want you to hear it differently.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, I loved how you said that, because Jesus used parables to tell stories. And really,
as a matter of fact, he never spoke to the people without using such stories. Thank you,
really?
Matthew. That's what it says in Matthew 13.
Okay. I guess it's true.
I would assume.
But here's the thing, because he's talking about kingdom principles, which are a lot of times hard for people to grasp. And so in order to do it in a story way, that's going to tell a lot of things about a lot of people. And he knew a lot of things going into that region. Amelia is in I think it's the women's Bible study, that 9:15, and she was talking about how lukewarm, when he's talking about if you're lukewarm, I'm going to spit you out. But he really wanted you to be hot or cold, but that was actually a reference to where they were at in that city, to being lukewarm, because the water came from the aqueducts from a long way away, and by the time it would reach that city, it would be lukewarm and disgusting, and he spit it out. So it is true that he would tell these things in order to teach big lessons.
Matthew 13:34, Jesus always used stories and illustrations like these when speaking to the crowds. In fact, he never spoke to them without using such parables.
So, marriage.
Interesting.
We have 3 married people in the room. And Chapel, you've been to a lot of weddings lately.
I have.
A lot. Give me a ballpark this year alone. How many weddings you've been?
6.
Wow. Not ballpark. Exactly.
Yeah, 6.
Seriously?
I keep count. Yeah.
I didn't know it was that high. And you've probably been in the weddings.
Yeah.
Because you're such a cool guy.
I've been in 5 of them, and I'm doing a wedding this summer.
Really? Is this your first one?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so I've done every aspect but get married.
Well, last week on the Central Weekly, we had to kind of speed things up because we had to get going, because Hayden did was that 2 weeks ago? It's been a long week.
Yeah, no, it was last week.
But Hayden did that message, and he did a great job for Kirsten and Nick's wedding. So let's keep talking about marriage. I like it how you said your first point, God's ways lead to good things we cannot do on our own.
We cannot get on our own.
On our own.
Yeah. I think the premise, for those of you who have not heard it yet, Phoebe, Chapel,
Two of them in the room.
the premise of the whole thing is God has established this higher and better way, and the good things that we're seeking in our life, the good things that we want, like innately want, the things that we want, like we were born to want. God has all of those things, but the way to the place that has those things is on the way that He's laid out, on the path that He's defined for us, and so that's kind of what that point is. The only way to get the good things that you're truly seeking is on the path that God has laid out.
And I think we have gone so far from that path as a country, as a world, as a culture, that it's definitely not an exaggeration to say that marriage is under attack.
No, not at all.
And we could say that the enemy has whispered or yelled, and there's a lot of other people yelling that has confused marriage, because marriage is a Christian. It's God's preferred method. And just like you said about the bridge that they wanted to build themselves in the story, we have rebuilt marriage to be what it's not supposed to be.
We've tried reshaping it. We've tried blending it into our culture. We've tried to make it what we want it to be. But ultimately, we end up saying, forget the old construct. We're just going to make our own. I mean, like, you're a male, you want to be a female, let's, whatever you want to make sexuality something that you decide, or a marriage is a human thing, so we can arrange it however we want. Kind of basically we take what God initially intended for good and we reshape it with our sinful human ways. And as we talk about in the sermon, it feels good for a minute. It seems right for a second, but there is trouble on that path that we don't see, but God does, which is why, He doesn't give us the guidelines that He does in His Word to harm us, but in fact to keep us from harm.
Yeah, and I think that's such a good example of what you said about the guide, because I'm thinking of the guide. What's that on a highway again? I always forget.
Guardrails?
Guardrails. So like when you're on a steep guardrail, and sometimes marriage feels like that. You're on a high mountaintop and you peek over the edge and you could fall off.
Boy, it does.
Right?
I've been there.
But like you're winding and you're curving, but it's for our good that those guardrails are there. It's not to hinder us or to box us in or to put us in a situation we don't want to be in. Those are the situations we should be in and are what's best for us. Chapel, as our youngest adult in this room, what's it like growing up in a generation that's, to me, even so, they've taken marriage, I don't want to say we all, but just growing up, and you got people that at your type of age, they're getting married and they're also just reconstructing what their view of marriage is. What's that like being? As
in like my friends, or just as my age group in general?
Group. You don't have to get into your friends.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's a whole, no. But, I didn't really notice a change in view of relationship until really I was in high school and everything. And it's real dangerous because, like you said, it's under attack. And then as a young high school Christian student, I was dating or whatever, and I started to see that I was taking these things lightly. And when I started taking stuff lightly, that's when like the idea of what was okay and what wasn't, that's when you're under attack. Yeah. So at that point, I anyway stopped, and I haven't dated since then. That's embarrassing, I know. But it's because there is a severity in your spiritual life when you open up a relationship that isn't Christ honoring there's not, two people aren't on the same page about Jesus or something like that, and then you see, just stepping back from the dating thing, like that's the least of your worry, right? You step back and you're just seeing like, man, these people who don't know Jesus, they're getting into something that is supposed to honor Jesus, right? And they don't even know who Jesus is. So you know how that's going to end up, right? So I think a lot of young adult dating problems, young adult marriage problems all stem from not having the right understanding that marriage is Christ honoring and for Christ. It's not for us. It's two people joining together to honor Jesus. It ain't about, yes, there's two people in love, but it ain't just about two people being in love. It's two Christians being in love with Christ, falling in love together in order to build more Christians and build a better faith life.
And John, you mentioned that about, hey, listen up, if you're not married in this room, we're going to talk about marriage, because there's so many things that unmarried people have done that have just almost uprooted or kind of rotted out the form of marriage even before they get into that.
Yeah, Hebrews 13:34 says marriage should be honored by married people. No, it says it says marriage should be honored by all. And so it's not just the people who are in the marriage that need to honor marriage. It's everybody, single and married alike, who need to honor the institution because it's something that God has put in place, right? And so if you're married, for sure, you need to honor the vows that you said before God and men and hold true to what you said that you would do. But if you're single, likewise, you need to honor the vows that other people took, and you need to honor the institution of marriage as an honor to God, because of the one who implemented it in the first place. And a lot of times we see problems within marriage because a single person doesn't honor the vows that somebody else took, and it lures this person who's in the marriage outside of those vows as well. So, I mean, obviously it takes two to tango, but everybody needs to respect marriage.
Tango.
Phoebe,
transition. Tell us, because we all, I think, agree that marriage is probably one of, if not the biggest shaper of who we are, in positive and negative ways. How's your marriage to Mr. Trevor Ile, family ministry pastor at Central? How has that shaped you of who? Like, how has your marriage shaped you as an individual?
I was just talking to somebody who was getting married recently, and she was kind of asking me just like, do you have any advice about marriage? And one of the things I told her is that you will benefit from the mindset of that person is your teammate. Yeah. If you can go into your marriage knowing that you will strengthen each other, you will complement each other, you will encourage each other, you'll build each other up, you will be able to accomplish so much more than you could on your own because you have a teammate who's with you through all of it. So just that mindset for me, Trevor was in high school ministry for 10 years and I've been doing ministry for almost 10 years. And so knowing that I have a teammate in that, even on the hard days, even on the good days, like through it all, knowing that I have a goal of advancing the kingdom of God and I have a teammate to do that with. What a joy that is,
Yeah. And I think really it was such a great point at the end, because this definitely was not a sermon of like, okay, here's point 3, 4, 5, and 6 of how to have a better marriage. But it was just of like, we need to take this thing seriously because God has given it to us for a reason and to shape us and to shape the world around us. And I think like you said, Christians have to have strong marriages in order to make this kingdom building work done right.
Here's really the driving point that I was trying to make and hopefully articulated this weekend. Obviously, you guys haven't heard the sermon yet, but is that marriage is for sure under attack. The family is under attack. There is, godly living of any sort is under attack. Not because the enemy hates marriage, not because the enemy hates the family, but because the enemy hates the maker of marriage. The enemy hates the maker of the family, the designer of those constructs, right? And so rather than attack him directly, he attacks the things that he made in order to discredit him in our eyes, right? Like if I can discredit what he's made, then obviously that's going to lead to discredit of the source that put it there. And so that's really the driving force that hopefully people picked up on, is that for sure marriage is under attack. All of these things are, but it's not so much a marriage thing as much as it is a spiritual thing, that the enemy wants nothing more than for us human beings to think less of the authority, supremacy, the goodness of God.
Yeah.
Which isn't a new tactic for him. That's literally what he did in tempting Eve.
Yep.
Right. The first sin was a temptation. Can I get you to believe that God isn't who he says he is? So man, he's just, he's clever, but it's the same thing he's been doing for so long.
And I love that too at the end with ministry time, that was the end of the sermon, because people need to understand that God is the God of restoration, and that I love it because in your story, it wasn't, okay, he just lifted them up from the ground and gave them what they needed. No, he made a new way. And I think that people need to understand that your marriage isn't too far gone because God is the God of restoration. So he's going to make a way back to him. And hopefully they find that hope through this message, and they could lean on each other as they lean closer to God. And if you're a single person and that might be, what God calls you to for the rest of your life, that's powerful, because that there's so much just things that you can accomplish as a single adult that you couldn't, as a married person with lots of kids too. I know that. So just always understanding that God is always in the business of restoration and shaping us to be more like Him, regardless of our institution that we're in. Okay, so transition time. Okay, so let's talk. We're going to ministry spotlight. Kid Depot has had a lot going on.
Yeah.
Physically bursting at the seams.
Yes.
And we talked about this, I think the last time you were on, a little bit about what physically, we've added some classrooms here.
Yeah.
Just because there's been so many space. So take the time now. Phoebe Ile, children's pastor, what's going on? Tell us what God has been doing lately in Kid Depot.
Yeah, there's just so much going on. Like you said, we're kind of bursting at the seams. We have new families every single week, new kids every single week. And so we're kind of having to develop some new strategies every single week of what we can kind of accomplish in this new season. Sometimes your old plans work and sometimes it's a season for readjusting. And that's kind of where we're at, is that we're just in a season of new vision and new plans and readjusting. And so we're excited about that because that brings a lot of just fresh hope, fresh joy, fresh perspective. And so it's really neat time to be part of Kid Depot for sure.
Chapel, you're in Kid Depot a lot. Why?
Chapel's famous in Kid Depot. I don't know if you knew that.
I enjoy kids because as embarrassing it is to admit, we have the same sense of humor.
Yeah.
All the things that kids find funny, I think are hilarious. But I also think that at that point, it's important, because not calling anything out, but most of the leaders in kids from kindergarten to fifth grade, their lives are women. Their teachers are mostly women. Youth leaders at that age are mostly women. So I think it's important for not only young men at that age, but also young ladies at that age to see a younger young adult male in their life who, is just as passionate about the Lord as their other teachers or leaders might be, and just also shepherding young men from that age also to become godly men in the future, because I think that I had a lot of young adult leaders at that age. So I think it's very important to have somebody in there who can guide young men at that age to become godly men in the future. Yeah.
It's such a good point, because I think that you will see more men volunteer and serve in middle school or high school ministry. But during these ages of Kid Depot, it's truly a foundation setting period. So what they're learning and what they're experiencing right now in Kid Depot at this elementary age and preschool age is going to shape the way they view the church and the way they view their own faith in the middle school and high school age. So we don't want men to only be involved at, when they're students. We want men to be shepherding them right now, because this is a foundation laying time and it's so important. So,
and just a shout out to the residency. It's crazy how much we have been blessed by you guys, because all four of you have done such a tremendous job in Kid Depot and also in so many different areas around here. It's been great for you guys, I know, to get an education here and to learn a lot, but it's been so beneficial for us as a church body to have youthful guys around pouring into these kids, specifically for Kid Depot. And just, again, like you said, Phoebe, building a strong foundation. It cannot be said that, again, since we said, you're talking marriages are under attack, families are under attack, and that godly male influence just isn't there in so many kids' lives right now. So tell us a little bit about some wins, share some stories, Phoebe, and then we'll talk about what's coming up next.
Well, it's been really neat lately to see how many kids are interested in baptism. They have a lot of questions. They want to know, what does it mean to follow Jesus? What does baptism mean? And so we have had so many conversations lately with kids about that. And that's been really, really great to see. It's also been really great to see parents navigating that conversation with their kids about such topics. So that's just been really a highlight for me in the last couple of months, is how many kids are really eager to develop and continue a relationship with the Lord. Some things coming up. We have family dedication. Jon and I do family dedication. That's coming up the first week of June. So that's always a really cool time of just families simply being able to dedicate their children and their parenting to the Lord. So it's always really cool to see the kids on stage, and Jon gives them a prayer and scripture for each child. Yeah, it's so neat.
Love that.
And talks about the meaning of their name, and it's really impactful and really meaningful. So,
and let's be honest, sometimes you have to stretch that a little bit. There's some names out there that the top 10, searches for that probably aren't coming up with some duds. Let's be honest. So you have to do some biblical, like,
think you
hey,
gotta
it could
leave-
also mean this.
Like sometimes when I'm doing it, I play like almost like a word association game in my mind because like, somebody's name could be like Rockius and like it means like picker of rocks, and you're like, okay, well, David picked up some rocks, and
Boom.
so maybe this person is, maybe God has you to be a giant slayer someday, and so we're going to give you this scripture that says, and so that's kind of a lot of times the way that we.
You know what? The Lord gave you a creative mind, John. Just use it.
Yep. And I think, and really, and here's the thing. So that's birth to how old?
Pre-K.
Pre-K. And then right now, centralnow.com/family, that is live. That link is live. You can register for that and all the contemporary services that first week in June. And really, gosh, Phoebe, you do a great job. I think we just kind of revamped your video that you did because your old one was a couple years old. And then looking at your PDF that people, like your questions, I mean, again, it's so vital for parents to understand that their role as parents is, monumental and so foundational.
I love how you talk about partnering with parents in the raising of their children in a spiritual way. I love that. I mean, that's just such a good, lens to look at it through.
Yeah, I try to put the emphasis on that anytime we chance to get to speak directly to parents because we don't want to replace you. We want to partner with you, because I think so many families, so many parents depend on their church to develop their child's relationship with the Lord. And in reality, they influence their children more than we do, way more than we do. Yeah. So we just want to partner with parents, not replace them.
Yeah, equippers. Yep. Okay. Speaking of new decisions, I forget if you've told me this already. Are you doing Foundations again this summer?
We are, yeah. Okay. So Foundations is a class for kindergarten through 5th grade students, and it's all about literally the foundations of our faith. So we kind of use John 3:16 as our driving point, and we break that down amongst like 4 weeks and just talk about Jesus and what does it mean to follow Jesus? What does it mean to believe in Jesus? And so it's a really cool experience for kids. We've had when you're like saying like, hey, come for a Bible study, you really don't know if it's like a lot of kids are going to engage in that, but we've had great turnout the last couple of years and we really feel like it's like a deepening moment for kids. So it's been awesome.
July?
Yes.
Okay. So we continue through the calendar. I feel like I need to bump up a bump. I don't think this has been announced anywhere yet. I
don't know if it has either.
This is where you're going to hear it first. Ready?
I'm so ready.
Fantastic Nights. I got to back away from the mic. 2023 has a date and a theme, and I'm really excited about this. I think there's going to be a lot of fun.
This is going to be up there.
So tell us, Phoebe, when is it and what is it?
August 7th and 8th, which is a Monday and Tuesday.
That's normal.
Yes. So,
ta-da!
Ta-da! Big announcement. Right here at Central. So Fantastic Nights, if you don't know, is our big family event for the year. So it's kind of like a way for kids and parents to come and just experience teaching and worship and games and just lots of fun together. Chapel's always one of our, I almost said characters.
Mascot? Leader?
Well, I don't know if there's another word for it.
Chapel leads a lot. We call you a host a lot too.
Right. Yeah.
Chapel leads a lot of our Fantastic Night stuff, and so it's always so much fun. And you want to tell them what our theme is this year?
Ooh. It is Under the Big Top.
Under the Big Top.
Fantastic Under the Big Top, like a circus. In case nobody got the reference, just in case they didn't.
And we're going to be talking a lot about what does it mean to use our gifts, use our gifts and talents for God's kingdom. So
that's going to be good.
Yeah.
And I think, are you going to be the ringmaster? Is that what they call it?
Yeah, and I'm going to do a trapeze act too. So in the catwalks, no net. One night only. Well, 2, but one night for the trapeze artist.
Definitely do it the second night, just because things go bad. The first
this just
night.
has Madagascar. That's all I can see.
But the one thing that we have been in talks.
Hoop.
Did we get the trapeze, ladies? Or is that
we're thinking about it?
We're thinking about.
We're gonna see what works.
We could take some budget money from somewhere else. I'm gonna say it here, but super excited. You're gonna see that sign up forms aren't out there yet, but we just know that a lot of people are planning their summers right now, and we want to make sure that gets on the calendar because I hear so many people like, oh, I wish we could go to that, but we just planned. It's like, don't plan your vacations yet. Don't do it yet.
Yeah.
plan it around Fantastic Nights because you're going to want to be here.
It's going to be so fun. And
fantastic.
we are truly excited about this theme, not only for like the message and the content that we're hoping to share, but also just like the fun aspect of it. Aaron made some graphics for us and showed me that today. Yeah. And they look so cool. So we're just really excited about the whole thing.
And really, I think this needs to be said because I never want you to say it. I want to say it. When a ministry is growing, it needs more help.
Yes.
So if this is, and I've just heard a statistic that the larger the church is, the less people give and the less people volunteer, percentages wise. If you're a smaller church, you volunteer more because it's more obvious that you're not volunteering. But I pray in Jesus' name that as we grow and we build up, that we buck that trend. We've been bucking trends the last couple of years around here at Central. So this is a trend we're going to stop. Notice I said buck because you're a bunk hunter. I have to say that very carefully.
I appreciate that.
But really, it's a thing where,
nice
again,
reference.
we're trying to bring foundational faith to these kids. And there is so much, again, if you're volunteering, you're given a lot of this curriculum. You're equipped by the leaders that we have in Key Depot on staff to do really well. And again, you're not signing your life away. It's a month on, month off commitment, which could mean a lot to a kid that you...
It can mean so much. I mean, in prayer time with our staff the other day, I shared about how many of us who are current staff or pastors at Central were students here.
Yeah.
And how like the pastors that were in those areas kind of stewarded that for us and how they prayed over us and encouraged us. And they kind of like pointed the way to experience ministry in this way. So it's so important that us as leaders and as a church, like do ministry like as if our church depends on it, because we literally could have a kid in elementary right now who could be the next children's pastor at Central. Or, I mean, just thinking about the way that we can develop and like steward those gifts with kids to help them realize they have a future in ministry, or they have a future in the church. They have a future in serving the Lord. So it's so important.
And I think it's important to note a lot of people don't like to volunteer in children's ministry because they look at it as, I don't want to babysit kids for an hour.
Far from that.
When it's church for kids.
Yeah.
And just like John's not babysitting adults, we're not babysitting kids. You know what I mean? We are teaching and shepherding and pastoring, and
absolutely right.
We need to worry just as much about our kids' faith as we do our own faith.
Yeah.
So get in there and serve.
Good. I mean, these guys.
Come on, guys.
Right?
Seriously.
We're passionate about
Phoebe
this
Ile
topic.
and Chapel Davis, thank you so much for sitting in on the Central Weekly. And next week, this is a transition. We're talking about families, continuing to build this house and continuing this momentum that we're building. You're going to tell us something in a couple weeks that I'm excited to let people hear.
What is that?
And we're done. We're done with time. But seriously, this is a time. You feel, especially just you showed that bumper again in service. It's a time to build up, and you get excited about when there's people that lives are being changed, and that's happening right next to you. And there's more people coming in, and there's just faith is developing in so many people that are hungry and that need healing, and they're coming to Jesus Christ. And Central just gets to be a part of that. And super glad
cool
that
is
you
that?
guys are part of it too. So. All right, we'll see you back next week. Thanks you so much, Chapel Davis, Phoebe Ile.
Thank you for having us.
Good job, Jared.
Jon Henninger.
Don't
Thanks,
mess with the
guys.
family.